Joining us now is Chloe Cole. Chloe has a fascinating story and has a lot of courage, and she should be complimented and really commended for that. Chloe, welcome to the program. Chloe, remind our audience of your story, and let's talk about the story at hand right now. Chloe, the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me on, Charlie. I'm an 18-year-old detransitioner and former transgender child from the state of California, and I transitioned socially starting at 12 and medically starting at 13 with puberty blockers and testosterone, and I had a double mastectomy at 15. I stopped transitioning roughly about a year afterward at 16, and I've been speaking about my story since last year.
Well, great. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, Chloe, what is your current opinion? What should we know about, let's just say, the drugs that are given to children or people that want to change genders, what it can do to you, specifically, whether it be SSRIs or whether it be the generic is really called bupropion, or the brand name, I believe it's called Wellbutrin. I might be mispronouncing that.
Yeah,
talk about some of the drugs that you were put on, and the drugs you were put on, and the state of mind that you were in when you were prescribed these incredibly aggressive pharmacological agents.
Right. So I was not only on blockers and testosterone, but I was also on various other pharmaceutical drugs throughout my childhood, including Wellbutrin, and I switched between various ADHD medications, including short form ones like Adderall, and longer release ones like Concerta. And I experienced negative effects from all of them, and none of them had really helped with my actual psychiatric issues. The testosterone and blockers, transitioning medically, with every treatment, there was a bit of a honeymoon period, but this went away after about a year or so after I started each treatment, and I felt worse. On the testosterone, I was very prone to getting angry, but it was also it was easier to regulate myself emotionally on the outside and not really show any emotion outwardly. But at the same time, it made it hard. I mean, it made it more difficult to cry and to open up about my emotions. And at the same time, I felt very depressed. And at the same time, I was on about midway through my transition, I was put on Wellbutrin to treat my depression. And it was a lot more difficult to tell how it affected me while I was on it, but it actually made me very, very irritable, very prone to emotional outbursts. And I went off of it last year, and it took somebody else in my family telling me that how it affected me to really realize that I was better off of it. And I didn't know this until I stopped taking it, but there's actually a black box label warning for use in children and adolescents, because it actually, I was put on, part of the reason why I was put on it was to treat my suicidal ideation, and it actually made it worse. And I didn't know this until after I'd stopped taking it.
So just to make sure that our audience is tracking, you were at a young age when this kind of cascade of interventions began. You are now a detransitioner. You were a minor. And
yes.
This particular shooter yesterday was suicidal, seemed to be sociopathic, could be one way to blame it, to explain it, because she even thought in her writing she was going to do something bad, and she did it anyway. From your experience, both with talking to detransitioners and the power of these drugs, do you think that we should probably have an abundance of caution when we are prescribing these antidepressants, SSRIs or Xanax or Zoloft or benzodiazepines, to children especially, or people that have other underlying either chemical imbalances or mental issues, given your experience?
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily describe this person as sociopathic. I think it's more so that they were a product of a broken postmodern world. I mean, they clearly had some underlying psychiatric issues that weren't being treated. And this person is part of a group of people that genuinely believes that they're part of a larger effort. They're victims of a larger effort to be eradicated from existence, from the population. And for this reason, you often see transgender activists making calls for violence. But I think that this is really only a symptom of a larger issue, and that these people aren't the enemy. The real problem is the pharmaceutical companies and the medical organizations that are pushing for these treatments that address the symptoms and not the actual issues, and cause further distress.
So that's very clearly stated. I want to zero in on part of it. And basically, they've created this lie of a quote-unquote transgenocide. I want to get your thoughts on it. But it creates almost these actions of what could be called trans jihadists, where people think they're on kind of a holy crusade, and they have lied to them. So, Chloe, where does this lie of trans genocide come from? It is not rooted in fact, it's not rooted in reality, and yet it is repeated time and time again. Where does this come from?
Like much of the information and protocols having to do with transitioning, it's very ideologically based. There isn't really any solid evidence to back any of it. They push transition as the only means of treating gender dysphoria, and anything else is treated as conversion therapy to try and convert somebody from identifying as their desired sex to their original sex, or as a genocide.
Yeah, and so, but
even if
sorry, please continue.
Even if that includes proper psychiatric care.